Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
I will sing to the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown.
All right, so we left off last week. Anybody remember we left off? I like a lot of Q&A. Q&A works. Keeps everybody from falling asleep on me because,
First part, we were on 18.
All right, we left off, right? And that was, we were going and we were, huh? Okay, don't worry about it. We'll bring you up to speed.
I can't say where we left off.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll make it easy for you. So we left off, we made it from 18, chapter 18, verse 1 through 10. And as I mentioned before, last week, I was kind of just getting a feel for the pace to see where we were myself as in sharing this information. So I want to make sure that if I go too fast today, tell me slow down. I don't have a problem. If I go too slow, tell me speed up. We know that. That's the easy one. We got it. So let's start. Let's pick up where we left off at, and that was forbidden practices. Now, chapter 18 talked about forbidden practices, and it was really, as you see, I put up here key points because we're just going to hit the key points. If there's other things we want to point out, I'll open it up. We'll talk about it, and then we'll push on. We'll even give it a little bit of New Testament things that they dealt with in the New Testament was a reflection, because remember, the children of Israel did not stop adhering to these laws. Even though a lot of it had went on in time, and some of them was forgotten, and a lot of it became flawed, you still had people who had bits and pieces of these laws that they carried out. And you actually had some that carried it out to the letter. And then you had others who actually carried it out so bad that Jesus had to come back and say, hey, y'all overutilizing laws, and you're penalizing the people for not being able to keep up. So I'm gonna give you new laws. I'm going to fulfill them. So I like to always make sure that even though we're breaking down the Old Testament, we make sure that we see how reflected in the New Testament. Because a lot of people, they'll get into the Old Testament and feel as though it doesn't have any relevance, when it has so much relevance, because that was the message that Jesus was coming to make sure that we were all part of. Some of the things that excluded us because of those messages or those laws, he came and gave us inclusion. He was the great includer. All right, so we talk about forbidden practices, and those forbidden practices in 18:19, we had some of the key points here. He told them, don't go into the nations doing what the nations do. We don't want you to go over there, because over there, they worship witches, wizards, fortune tellers, necromancers, and that is of them. And he specifically said in that chapter, not for you. And the reason why it wasn't for them is because all of them, they relied, those nations, they relied on those avenues. Hey, if I can raise the dead, maybe the dead will come back and give me secrets of the grave. If I can go to a fortune teller, well, the fortune teller will tell me what's going to happen in the future. And God was basically saying, look, you don't have to worry about all that. I got you covered. I told you where you're going, the land you're getting ready to possess. Just remember the things that you're seeing, it's not for you. I mean, that's pretty clear cut. It isn't yours. I'm yours. And it's always when I hear something in the Bible and it says not for you and pertaining to something you don't do, it elevates my mind to say, then if it's not for me, then the opposite is God, and God is for me. So I don't need anything else. And Peter dealt with that, right? Peter dealt with that in the New Testament. He dealt with a magician who came up and, hey, I know magic. I forgot his name. Anybody remember his name? I had to go back and look it up and bring it back. But he dealt with it. He was like, I can do all the magic and all the wizardry and wondering. And Peter was like, I'm not worried about it. Then after it failed, he came to Peter and was like, you think you could let me in? And Peter was like, yeah, go back to your wizardry. And even Saul dealt with it, right? After Saul fell from grace and he lost his anointing and it was given to King David, what did Saul do? It's a little later in the book. Giving y'all cheat codes for when they start doing the next sections. It deals with necromancy or raising of the dead. So Saul, being the king, Saul went and said, "Hey, I haven't heard from God in a while. I need something. Maybe, just maybe, I'll go find somebody who can raise the dead, and I'll ask Samuel." He raised Samuel from the dead, and Samuel said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I was over to sleep with my father, and you woke me up. I have no answers for you." You know, and that's that. When you get to that story down in a book of let's say it's in Samuel Kings, and they talk about that. It's a very interesting story. When I read it for myself, I was like, "Wow, he really went and woke Samuel up from his grave." So that was another thing that they had this information, because remember, this information was there, and Saul was a king, and we learned last week that the king should do what?
Heed the commandments.
He was supposed to write the laws himself and keep them and read them daily.
And daily. So if we know that Saul had those laws and he wrote them and read them daily, he already knew that he violated. All right. We got any other key points from those particular verses in that chapter? You got it. All right. I told you we was gonna roll along today. We might be out here early enough to say, oh, we passed supper. Supper was 6 o'clock. So late supper. All right. So we're talking to now we're gonna roll into the new prophets. The new prophets was chapter 18 again, 15 to 22. Now, some of the key points that we noticed from the when he said he's going to bring in the new prophets, one of the key points was the same thing he reiterated about the kings, the same thing he reiterated about the priests. The new prophets was going to be from where? Amongst their brothers, amongst the tribes. And that's because you don't want an outside influence coming in there to tell you, "Hey, I'm a prophet, but I'd rather take you to a wizard, a necromancer, all the other stuff." So those prophets came from out of the tribe. And the key point about the prophets was that the information that they were telling to the nation was coming from where? God. Not only was it coming from God, God said himself, when Moses was telling the law, he said, he is going to put the words in your mouth. That's very interesting because, you know, when you think about it, and you think about all the different prophets, and as they walked, the words that came from their mouth was directly from God. And you hear everybody nowadays want to refute the scriptures and say, "No, it's man-made. It's man-written." Well, man might have put a pen to the paper, but the words that those prophets that we follow, those things that we learned from them, those things that Israel learned from them, came straight from God, without question. And those people, if you question the prophet, what happened? Or you went astray to the knowledge that they were put. Oh, just quick trip to the gate. You know, you probably gonna hear me say that quite a bit in these, because everything was quick trip to the gate. Hey, you don't want to listen? It's okay. It's a gate over here, and on the way you walking towards the gate. Give me a second. I got my stone. Hey, where we going? Hey, the prophet told you to do X, Y, Z. You didn't want to. Quick trip to the gate. And I believe Pastor Ken actually gave a sermon on that, where a prophet gave them word, told them to do something, and he didn't do it. Now, granted, he didn't get took to the gate. It got a lot worse. Sons died in front of him, was blinded, and then took into captivity. Some people might have just went to the gate, you know, after that. And another key point about the new prophet that really stood out to me was they asked for it. That wasn't like, "Hey, this is new." No, remember when it was on the mountain and y'all said, "Hey, let us not see God or we shall die." And God said, "Hey, that's good." And even Moses in that instance, when we talk about the word of God being coming out of his mouth, when Aaron and Miriam challenged Moses, "No, we don't want to do it this way." God had to kind of hit him with an autocorrect. Let me fix this for you. He said, "I talk to Moses mouth to mouth," meaning the words that Moses is getting is coming from my mouth, from his mouth to the people. Now, We know that when we talk about a prophet coming from the tribe, what we ask for, I always say that everything is always in my heart and my life is going to relate to Jesus Christ. And yeah, we know that Jesus is Messiah. He is our salvation, but he was a prophet. He was, and he met all the criteria from the rule from the tribe. We asked for it because Israel at that time, they were oppressed and they kept saying, send us the Messiah. We are tired of Rome and everybody else. Send us Messiah. So once again, they asked for it. And everything Jesus said, he said, I get from my Father. He even told him, he said, I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't see my Father do it. So he met all the rules. So when we talk about, and I talk to different communities of other faiths, and we have conversations, and they say, well, he was a prophet. I say, well, yeah, he was a prophet. God told him about prophets. I'm not gonna, right, but he was more than that, and that's why I put a prophet and so much more. Because if you just leave it as a prophet, you're leaving him, you're leaving off that. Say again?
Downplaying him.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Any other key points you're gonna add that you can add? Anything I missed? Anything else that stood out for you?
Talk about the false prophet too.
Okay. Want to elaborate?
It says that a false prophet, again, take a trip to the gate, okay? And they ask how are we to recognize a false prophet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he says if he prophesies something and it don't happen, it's a false prophet.
Now, I'm not one to look at nowadays and hammer anything because there's a lot of lack of knowledge that's going on in the world. But I will say that the rise of prophets of this era is high. And I will say that I've been in places and somebody said, I prophesied this, and it don't happen. And if I was to go and point that out to said named person and say, you said this was going to happen, it ain't happened. Come on with me. Go to the gate. No, but I wouldn't do that because guess what? Even that person now has the thing that everybody else got. And we all know what that is. That's grace, right? But we should try to warn our brothers of those things because false prophets, they ran amok. They gave out bad word. They sat around. What is it? Elijah? That were false prophets, right? Hey, y'all go out here. I'll start my fire. Y'all start your fire, and whoever fire burn, y'all fire. Okay, I'm gonna just got me. All right, boom, fire, poof, burn them all up. Gone. Like 200 of them, right? So we know that if we keep looking at the things that how this order proceeds, we know that false prophets bring false information that doesn't come true. And if we rely on God, then that's what we have. So we already had a prophet to fulfill everything. He told us everything that was coming. So anybody who coming down to, I prophesied $1 million in your life. Hold off on that. Don't go. Hold on. Just relax. Because I ain't playing the lottery and I ain't working hard. So this $1 million, I want to know how you're gonna get it. Because you got like set me up to rob a bank with you or something. I don't know how we're gonna do it. So a lot of times, gonna fall from an armored truck. And you keep it, you still might go to jail. So we'll get to a lot of those laws today too. All right. So is there anything else we talk about the new prophet?
One more thing.
Okay, what you got?
One more thing in this, and you talking about in this day and time.
Mhm.
Unlike back in those days, like you said, you can't pick them up and take them to the gate. But it's important for us to know the difference and recognize the difference. See, so we can't pick them up and take them to the gate, but we can pray about it.
We sure can.
We can ask God to reveal things to us, which He does every day, and that's all we can do. If you can't even recognize it to begin with, then you may be led astray.
And that was the main point of not following false prophets, because their words wasn't God's word. If you follow a false prophet and he takes you, it's not happening. It's not going to happen. And then you follow it, and that word didn't come from God. Thank you, Eric.
Yes, sir.
So we now talk of the cities of refuge. And this when probably one of the most difficult things when I initially started to, read the scriptures on my own to understand it. So I had to I had to ask God, hey, teach me, tell me, to explain this to me in the best manner of my mind. Send people in my direction that will give me this insight onto these cities. And it was the best way that I can explain it. And this is where I would say, if you got better information than I do, please help me. Because the 3 cities of refuge was this. Each tribe had their own lands. And that land, they had to divide it. They had to have the city for the people, other city for the people. And then they had what they had was called a city for the manslayer, or as we call it today, involuntary manslaughter. Involuntary manslaughter might be a little stretch. More so a killing by accident. It explains that, hey, if I'm out in the woods and I swing my axe and I bring my axe back too far and I bust the man in the head, I didn't do that on purpose. If I'm chopping a tree down and a tree falling, I did not do that with the intent to kill him. Now, in the beginning, I was like, well, why would you want to send these people off to the city if it's not an accident? But these cities of refuge, as I really started digging, was it really for the person that committed the act? Because we look at the word, right? The city of refuge. Refuge is what? A safe place. A sanctuary. So I'm thinking to myself, man, a city of refuge for somebody who killed somebody. But the beauty of when I really looked at it and broke it all down and I thought about it with my most simple mind is, this city of refuge was this. If I have a city over here and a city over here and it's divided over here and this is the city of refuge, and somebody accidentally killed somebody. Now, everybody had family, they were all close, and this person is here. Guess what that city of refuge that we've sent this person away. Look at the distance between it, right? It's miles. Because these were miles, these cities weren't close. So the person over here who wants revenge because you killed somebody that's close to me, I have a right to avenge my blood. Man, you know what? This walk is really long and I'm getting kind of tired.
Count to 10.
Count to 10.
And
So
you couldn't touch, they couldn't touch the person in the city of refuge. And it was to prevent revenge like that and prevent somebody seeking revenge and committing a crime their own self.
there it is. So a city of refuge not only protected somebody who did something accidental, but also protected, it keeps somebody from it stay their anger. Jesus talked about that, stayed in the anger.
But sin not.
There it is. These are things that, even though they seem so old and way back, and man, these laws they still make sense. And honestly, it's been times in my life that when I live in a house with my wife and but I got to climb up them steps. And by the time I get up there, I'm kind of winded. All right, whatever I was mad about, I'm more tired than mad. So maybe we can come to some type of agreement. We can have a civilized conversation. My actions are not grounded in anger. Yeah, let me breathe. I love Looney Tunes, and I always think about like when like Bugs Bunny do something and they chasing it, and Yosemite Sam finally catch up to him and he exhausted. It's that time, right? He's too tired to even shoot the rabbit that he's been chasing after all the time. So those cities of refuge. And another big part of it too is, as the city grew, what happened? What had to continue to happen?
And create more cities.
You had to create more cities. Hey, the cities are growing, create more cities. So 3 and 3 and 3 and 3 until you got, boom, we got a big, big world. All right. Are there any other additions to that we think of? I'm telling you, man, boom, we hitting the numbers here. Am I moving too fast? All right. So we talked about, I always think that Jesus visited those cities. He went to the places where everybody else wouldn't go, to show those who everybody else felt like, hey, you're you can't be forgiven. He went to those cities to offer that thing that everybody else was given right there in the cities where they had it perfect or had it good.
Concerning the cities of refuge.
Okay.
One more thing. It says that if though a man runs to the city of refuge who did commit a crime intentionally,
Mhm.
okay, then that city from where he's from can have him brought back to the city and tried for that crime.
That is correct. If that man did it, what happens is if he does willingly kill somebody, the blood guilt is still to be fulfilled. He still could be brought because he did something wrong. And if they didn't, that city would be condemned because they did not correct the wrong, the shed of innocent blood. So yeah, they would go and get him and they would bring him back before the judge, and the judge would say, all right, everybody, time to go to the gate because we know what he did. You know, and that right there, because when you get brought back, right, you can't just get brought back and say you're wrong. You need what? Bam! And then all the books just start to work out together. And now we're gonna go into
So if someone killed someone intentionally
mhm,
and ran to the refuge,
mhm.
and they brought witnesses to the refuge,
2 or more.
2 or more,
They actually brought him back to
and
the
said, he's here in refuge, but he actually did do this intentionally.
mhm.
Refuge says,
Let them stand trial.
Give him up. Hey,
you got to leave the refuge and go with them.
because if you allow the city of refuge to become like the other cities where it happened, then there is no refuge. There is no safe place. There is no safe place for somebody who did something wrong, who is searching
Did something
accidentally, who's searching for who needs that forgiveness. You know, it talks about murder. It talks about, you know, that act of killing. But these city of refuge, you know, when I like I said, when I looked at it, they weren't the best cities. So it might not have been somebody who killed somebody, but if I know people here have committed an offense, where you think the thieves are gonna go? Because they think about it like, hey, it's a city, it's a bad city, but it wasn't. That was a common misconception amongst the people. So these cities of refuge, they weren't meant to be places where crime just ran rampant. I can just go in here and kill everybody. It was a place for safety for those that committed an act that needed that forgiveness. And it gave, like I said, it gave time. Now we talk, so it was chapter 19, 1 to 13 talked about the cities of refuge. Chapter 14, I put them in there, and I forgot to underline it. Property boundaries. It was real specific, it was quick. It was like, hey, if this is your property, don't go move the line. That was clear cut. It made sense to me. If I own this much of grass, late at night, don't sneak out there and say, it's a nice piece of grass right here. Now it's my grass. Because those property lines were what? They were inheritance. So if I moved a property line to the left or to the right, I was stealing somebody's inheritance. That's generations and generations and generational land. And one of the things, a little bit of digging and studying, Judas sold land. Judas loved to do anything with money. He went and bought and sold land from people. He took people inheritance from up under him. It was about the money. All right. Laws concerning witnesses. We kind of touched this in previous laws, right? But this was a reiteration, and it went into it a little bit more. And I believe Andy had brought it up last week, right? When we talked about, well, what if somebody is a false witness? And they come up and they give falsely, and how do we take this? And we said, well, now people take the stand all the time and get away with it. Well, actually, they don't. They got a bigger boss to answer to. It might not be the judge. They might have got away with it on the stand. But back in the day, you had to have the mouth of two or more. You paid the price of, and if you falsely accuse somebody, you paid the price of what you accused. So that makes the accusation that you're saying falsely very serious. Because if you accuse somebody to death, you know, now you got to pay in death. So it made these people, when they had the accusations, more of a conversation one-on-one. Hey, before I go accuse you and take you to the judge and the priest, can we talk about it? That property line right there that we had, you moved it a little bit. Think we can fix it? I didn't do anything. Hey man, I'm not making this up. I know what my property is. No, you made it up. All right. I tried to handle this the most, positive way we can. Take it to the judge and the priest and bring it up there. And it wasn't always death. Sometimes they just say move the property line back, fix it, because everybody wasn't just killing everybody. It wasn't just walking around with a bunch of stones thrown up in the air. Like, yep, today is a good stoning day. Got my magic stone. I threw this one last week. I went and picked it back up. All right. So we talked about that bringing it before the judge, and we also got something very pivotal at the very end of when we talk about concerning witnesses. Something that Jesus talked about. Eye for an eye. It was eye for an eye, blood for blood, tooth for tooth. Jesus basically said, hey man, that law, because remember he came to fulfill, he said, that law right there, man, that's going to lead the whole world lame and blind. If we keep doing that, we got to find a better way. All right. Maybe that. All right, man, we moving. And we're making good time. I like making good time. All right. So battle conduct. Now, battle conduct was chapter 20, verse 1 through 20. And when I put key points up there, I put a lot. Because in battle conduct, it was so many different things that he talked about prior to going out. It was a lot of lay of the land. And if I'm farther than some of the readings, let me know and I'll slow it down. Huh? All right, well, let's talk about it. Look, let's talk about it. That's the beauty of it. We got the Bible right here in front of us. It gives us things to talk about. All right, so some of the key points when we talked about going to battle, because remember, Israel, they were going to take these lands, but it was other people in those lands that they were taking them from, which means the men had to be ready for war. And the conditions that were explained were for conditions of the heart, conditions of the mind, going into battle. And I'll give you a little bit about myself. So anytime we prepare to go out on a deployment, one of the things they always told us to make sure your family's taken care of. Make sure they got enough food. Make sure that that if you haven't spent time with your wife, if you haven't whatever you need to take care of it. Because once you cross that line to do battle, we just want you here. And it was the same concept in that key point. Some of the things that he pointed out, or some of the laws where Moses was telling me. Gotta make sure I got it right. That's some good notes. He always told, remember, we're going out there, enemy forces, don't care how many it is, how many horses they got, how many cavalries. It's always been reiterate. Say again.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid, right? Because why not be afraid? This guy got you, and it makes it. And I like to share the stories, so when you get to them, I call them little cheat codes. Take notes. So one of the most beautiful stories in my eyes is when King David, before he was a king, he was just a little shepherd that wanted to go up and peek into the line of battle, and he said, "Hey, I brought my brother some food up here." And as he walked up to that line, and he was like, "Yeah, I brought food up," and he was like, "Hey, what you doing here, David? You don't belong." He said, "Man, I come here. I just brought y'all some food." And they said, "Well, David, you don't belong here." And David said, "What do you mean I don't belong?" He said, "It's a battle going on, man. It's Goliath over there." He said, "Man, Goliath? He looking across the horizon. Goliath, he don't slay y'all. He don't beat y'all down, made y'all, pitiful." He said, "Man, aren't y'all God's army? Why are y'all afraid? Like, what's wrong with y'all?" And they looking at, "No, David, no." And Saul goes up to Saul. Say, "Saul, man, I don't mind going to fight this guy." And the first thing that Saul tells David is, "Hey, man, this guy's a man of battle from his youth. And you just a youth. You ain't cut for this." And David said, "Wait a minute." He dusted himself off a little bit. He said, "Wait a minute." And he gave him his resume of fighting lions and bears and all that. And he told him, he said, "I did all that because I wasn't afraid. I had God with me everywhere I went." And Saul said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "That guy over there, he'll just be just like the rest of them." He said, "How can you allow him to stand up here and insult God's army?" That was beautiful. And guess what the last thing Saul told him before he went to fight? The last thing he said to David, go with God. David could have turned around and said, I already go with him. So you just giving me updated information. I think it's Samuel chapter, I'll give it to you afterwards, because it's one of my favorite ones. I love it because the way you break it down, I think, man, that's powerful, because it reminds me every day to every fight that I get into. You know, every time I leave my house, I'm going with God. I can't lose. You know, I'm a winner. So, all right. So a couple of things, like I said, he told him, hey, make sure you spend time with your wife, make sure you take care of your house, your vineyards. He said, if you haven't eaten from your own vineyards, go and eat. Don't come out here, because you can imagine being out there in the battlefield and chopping away, you having a good battle. And, man, did I prune that grape? You know, you have to worry about pruning a grape tree, and boom, now you got ran through. All right. But he also told him in those different in those areas to make sure that you go out there and annihilate those armies that deserve annihilation. And it was 6 of them. I'm gonna have to read them off because I want to make sure I say the names right. So it was where we go?
I got you.
There we go. Look, I call a phone a friend.
The Hittites
Uh-huh.
and the Amalekites,
Uh-huh.
Canaanites, Perizzites, Havites, and Gypsies,
Yep.
as the Lord your God has commanded you.
It was a command. Those particular armies was a no spoil. It was a no spoils. Don't bring back nothing. Take them out. Total annihilation. But then there was the other armies that they went up against. And he said, those you can annihilate all the men. Bring no women back. What leads us into now. I jump a little ahead because the two ties in. If you go to chapter 21, verse 10 through 14. Verse 10 through 14 talks about that particular thing of bringing a female back. There were certain parameters that when you brought a female back, that if you found her beautiful and she was from one of the armies that was not set for annihilation, she had certain steps that she had to go through before you could bring her in and make her your wife. She had to shave her head, trim her nails, because a lot of those armies that they were fighting, the women let their nails grow really long, because some of the women fought. That's why those armies they say annihilate, the women fought too. They just didn't sit by. You got to kill them all. They were trained to protect their men, because these are people of a nation, and they know that other nations are around. That if they come in, their goal is not to come in and peacefully
Cohabitate.
Say again? Cohabitate. Yeah, that's the word. Thank you, Eric. They ain't coming to cohabitate. They coming to annihilate, a whole different 8. But the ones the ones where the women you chose, you found her beautiful, shave her head, trim her nails. You gave her a month to mourn her father and her lost brothers. And that was right. And once they did that, you follow the normal process of making her your wife. That was 21 through 10. So we're gonna go back to we're gonna go kind of in a circle, because I put those two together because they talked about the battle and then talked about the women if you found one that you want to marry. Are there any other key points we can find in there?
Read verse 20.
Say again.
Verse 20. He didn't even he took it down to the trees.
Yeah. Only the trees which you know are not trees for food, you destroy and cut down, to build sieges, to work against the cities that's fighting against you until it fails. So in other words, if it was a tree and it was a fig tree, don't chop it down, because we out here fighting a battle. And guess what? I'm gonna need that fig tree. But I could chop this other tree down, build a siege, because these cities, they still had high walls. Maybe not really, really high, but high enough to where you had to use to make a ladder to make a siege so you can climb over the wall and attack the city from the inside. Thank you, Eric. All right, the next chapter, well, the next part, we're gonna kind of backtrack a bit. Chapter 21, verse 1 through 9. Now, you know, when Pastor BJ get back, he gonna say, man, you don't ate through almost all of Deuteronomy. You ain't leave me nothing left. I say, I left you all the best parts. What's that? The end of it. No, just no. So unsolved murders. Huh? Uh-oh, I'm in the world of trouble. So unsolved murders. Unsolved murders, when we talk about it, we're talking about I came upon a field. It was a dead body in the field, let's say in the tribe of Judah or in the land of Judah. Come across a body. There's nobody around. Unexplained. So the Israelites was big on fulfilling the commitment that God had gave. If blood is shed in your land, you have to atone for it. So the things they did to atone for that blood was bring an oxen or a goat kid. You bring them out to the river. I think it's the Wadi that they talked about, specific river. They had actually a specific place you brought. You got to find a priest. You couldn't just say, oh man, we got this body, because all of these things had to be brought before the judges and the priests, right? To make a right ruling. If I came across a body and say, hey, I didn't kill this body, it wasn't me, but I did do it, then I guess I gotta try and run to the city of refuge and they're gonna bring me back. You see all these things tying together. I love the beauty of Deuteronomy, because when you look at it and you don't break it down, it does seem like a lot. But when you put it in little sections, small bites, you start to see, man, this really makes sense. These laws they sound complicated, but they really wasn't all that complicated. And now, and I say that because now I talk to people, once again, different sects. For some reasons, people always like to talk to me. And they'll say, man, the law said this. And I say, do you know how it all interconnects? No, it doesn't connect. It's just one part. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you say, go ahead. And I reiterate what was said in Galatians. If the law is for you, then the Messiah is not for you. And I leave it at that. But they would bring this oxen down to the lake, and they would find a priest, and the priest would say, hey, okay, we're going to go, because they bring it, they bless it, they break his neck, and they wash their hands. And that blood guilt is gone. That was pretty simple. Any additions to that? All right, we're getting close to the wrap-up time. I think we're doing good. All right, now when he said wash your hands, I thought about Pontius Pilate, right? Pontius Pilate said, hey man, I dip my hands in this water and I wash my hands up. Different type of washing, but it stood out to me in that portion of it.
He actually
Go ahead.
measured to see which city was closest to the body.
Correct. If it's unsolved, if it's
Unsolved
right,
murder.
right.
If somebody found a random body, then it would be the city that was closest to the body
Yeah, right. I agree with
that
you.
would be responsible for atoning for
Right.
the cleansing of the hands.
I'm trying to understand. Like if it was found in the middle?
Somebody get the head, somebody get the feet.
No. What I'm saying is like it's found in the middle. Because why I gave a specific town is because these towns were rather close. So are you? I mean, this is clarity for me too. Are we saying like if they found a body on the road?
Yeah, in verse 1 and 2,
Okay.
it says, starting at verse 1 and
Okay.
21, if one be found slain in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee to possess it, lying in the field, and it be not known who has slain him, then the elders and thy judges shall come forth, and they shall measure unto the cities which are round about him that is slain. And it shall be that the city which is next unto the slain man, so the city that is closest to the slain body,
We'll do the
even the elders of that city shall take an heifer, which had not been wrought with, and which had not drawn in the yoke. So it's not, they didn't just pick a city.
No, and that's what I said. That's and maybe I should have been clear when I said if a body is there and a body is in Judah, then the measuring line, you're saying that if it's, let's say Judah's here, Gad, whatever, it's all kind of scattered around. And let's say this road here doesn't belong to anybody. And they measure it. If this is close, this is who does the body. If this is close, this is who does the body. I want that. If the body is in Judah and nobody knows, it's the same concept.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So if it's, I get what you're saying. If it's in the middle, then it's no concept.
It's not in the city.
If it's not in the city, okay.
Right.
Okay. All right.
It's not a mob hit.
Not a mob hit. Mob hit. And you know, that actually makes sense. You clarify that for me. See, I told you. Learn something new. That makes sense. Because now we're just talking about the actual land altogether.
Right.
Damn,
If the body is found on the road, close to the woods, which woods, they would measure
which city is
which
close?
city is
Man,
closest
so
to
it's
the
almost-
deceased body, then that city is responsible for atoning and providing the heifer to do the cleansing of the hands.
Man, it's almost like, you know, if you had an evil mind, man, come on, walk me over here.
I don't like them over there.
walk me over here real quick. Because we're not gonna waste our cattle because we don't got enough. We're gonna go over here and I'm gonna slay you real quick, run back home, and they're gonna just find you tomorrow. Thank you. That verification. That's why I say I never think you're the smartest person in the room. Are there any other things that you can find out? Because we just learned that it's more for the mid row, in between.
You got something there?
I got something that pertains to that. When you're talking about choosing which city it goes to, look at verse number 5. I'm gonna read it. And the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for them the Lord thy God hath chosen to minister unto them. That's really key right there. Okay, so you know that we can say you and I are in that time right now, and you and I kill someone and we take them down the road. So they're closer to another city. Okay, so how do you know what I'm saying? So on the face of it, they would go to that city, and the elders and you know they would. But see, really key for this is for them, for those priests, the Lord thy God hath chosen to minister unto them. So they're led by the Spirit. So they're just not going to just haphazardly, you know what I'm saying, choose on their own.
Not gonna just say, hey, this body was close to Judah, then we just gonna let it be Judah. It's gonna be, what it say, by by their mouth, every strife and every stroke is tried.
And also, was speaking like that, since the Levites was preaching to everybody, they know the clans. So if you are from this tribe, they know like, wait, you are way out of your range. So why are you over here? You up to no good or something like that?
Are you saying like if they saw the person?
Yeah, when you
Okay.
find a body, like, okay, say you find a pure Chinese person down in the bayous of Louisiana.
I get what you're saying. So in other words, if somebody was from, let's say Judah,
Mhm.
and it was found over by the measuring line of Gad, that's a Gadite. What are you doing all the way over here? Hey, you know, hey, what are you doing over here?
Because everybody knows their name. It's like,
And I think that's more for the identification of it, but I think what they're talking about is the actual coming across by not so much of where they came from, but who's the responsibility of removing the guilt. Because no matter if you were from Judea or if you were from you were a Gadite, no matter where it's at, if it's a dead body close to your land, then that guilt has to be cleaned. And go ahead.
it's still like investigation. If somebody passed away here in North Carolina,
Mhm.
no matter where you're from, North Carolina got to solve that case.
Right. And that if you put it, that's the best way to put it. If it happened over there in the land of Dan and they got to clean it up, And guess what, Dan? The plumb line or the measuring line came to you. The priest came by strife and stroke, and the strife and stroke is measuring, making sure that it's honest. And they say, all right, this is how it is. Because remember, when a priest spoke, his word was from God. It was it. Wasn't no more. If you started, pick up some stones. Meet me at the gate.
You can't challenge that.
Yeah, meet me at the gate.
Yard ninjas.
Yep. Hey, bring out the little. Well, they say, you know, my mind works in a funny way. You know, I could just. Why'd you say that? Because now, you know, I got a bunch of guys. They got the, you know, the turbans on. They got their robes on, and they got like they don't made like the little first down measuring things, and they running out there, and they put it there, and the guy, he's like, bring it back. That was close. No, okay, all right. That's enough joke. That's enough jokes on. All right. Huh? They're a rabbit hole. Rabbit holes are fun sometimes. All right. So are there any other additions to that? And thank you for it, because that makes clarify. Now we know you're talking about the middle of the road. Are there any other key points outside that we found out from verse 1 through 9 in chapter 21? All right. Now we're going to talk about, and we're going to wrap this up. Man, perfect. Boom. Timing. I like timing. All right. Rights of the firstborn and a rebellious son. I combine those two because when we talk about the rights of the firstborn, we're talking about the things that are given to your firstborn son. We're talking about, hey, he's going to inherit the land. It's going to continue to get passed down. But it was some stipulations when talking about this particular situation because there was 2 wives. And one wife, he hated. I don't like her. I don't like her. But her son was the firstborn son. And then there was one son that he loved. But you could not take away the birthright of the firstborn son just because he's hated. And in fact, if you tried to do that, he had to get what? Double. You try to take away something from the firstborn son, guess what we give? Double. You know, it made me really think, and I always try to see connections to how it is with me. And I can't say this is something that, you know, we all have to agree on, but it's just what I call a Walkerism or Peteism or Otherism, whatever name I may be called at that time. But I say this: Jesus was the firstborn, right? And he got the full share and the full blessing of what God gave. And if you think about it, us being unrighteous beings by nature, we would be that child that would be hated, right? But God made sure that we got double the blessings. For those who will, you know, if they naturally, Jesus being the firstborn and us being brought into the family through adoption, he makes sure that he blesses us double. And that's where I saw that for myself. When I read that, thinking of Jesus being that firstborn, the first fruit, the loved child, but us being the hated child, and God saying, because these rules come from God, right? And God seeing us and saying, you know what? I know they're hated because of their sin and their nastiness, but I'm gonna give them double. I'm gonna make sure that they're blessed beyond measure. I'm gonna make sure that they get an inheritance that's not deserved. I'm not just gonna get it. I'm gonna make sure they get double, as long as you don't give it away. And then that leads me to the point of the rebellious son. So the rebellious son gave, you know, specific parameters. He wouldn't obey the laws of the tribe. He was a drunkard and a glutton. Now, when we think of a drunkard, we look at what the scriptures talk about a drunkard, because we get people who say, "Oh, you're a drunkard because you drink." That's not a drunkard. A drunkard was one who spent all his time and energy down at the bar. His decisions were made by that intoxication. So his mind was never cleared. He sought after it. It was his life. If he had problems, he drank. So a drunkard isn't somebody, oh, you drink, you're a drunkard. No, because a lot of people, they'll tell you that. If you have a drink, you're a drunkard. No, you had a drink. You know, they talk about having wine and stuff in the Bible all the time. And I'm not really getting all too in depth with that, but a drunkard was somebody who in the town, they were looked upon because all of their actions brought a negativity to that particular tribe. And it was because they spent a lot of time. I think in some of the Proverbs, they actually talk about don't be a drunkard. Don't be one found late night in the ditch, you know. And we talk about a glutton, one who indulges. You know, these words, I had these words when I was younger coming up, you know, I just think gluttony meant you just ate a lot. You know, somebody call you a glutton, I'll stop eating. I'm not gonna eat. I don't want to be a glutton, but that's not it. It's when you go past that point. I was reading something one day and they said a glutton is someone who is full to a point and to go past that point. So when I really got the understanding of it, you know, anything in our life that we overindulge in. Like I love sneakers, but if sneakers became the one thing that I overindulged in, that means I'm putting it above God. I'm saying, man, I gotta get a pair of sneakers before I go to church. I gotta get this. I gotta worry about this. You see what I'm saying? So that's the gluttony part of it. And when it comes to the rebellious son, they talked about that because he was hurting who? His whole family. And it said his mom and his dad, right? Because if you're a rebellious son, who was to bring you to the priest and the judge? Your parents. The people who love you the most, which means they probably exhausted every avenue that they possibly could to do as much for you as they possibly could to turn you away from the act of whatever that gluttony, that indulgence, and that drunkenness. They tried everything and it just didn't work. So they had to take you to the priest and to the judge, and the priest and the judge, they made sound decisions. Remember, everything the priest and the judge was not done haphazardly. They probably had witnesses. Well, first off, they got two witnesses, your mother and your father, which was the command. Honor thy mother and thy father, and thy days shall be longer, because they're going to be the ones that if they gave up, and it's hard, it's hard. You know, I got two hard-headed kids, and I can't see myself taking them to get stoned. It's hard. Love is a tremendous thing, and it will exhaust you before you make that decision. But the rebellious son pushed them to that point. And once you get pushed to that point, the parents, because remember that you got two witnesses right there, they gathered stones and they took them to the gate. And I'll end it right there, and I'll also add not an addition to, but kind of like I said, everywhere in the Old Testament, I like to see Jesus, you know, and I like to see what God does for me. And when we talk about that rebellious son, you know, I think about those who haven't been elected. You know, those whose name hasn't been written since the beginning of time. That rebellious nature was always them. You know, and God loves you, but he knows that it's not going to be corrected. No matter how much love, caring people he put in your life around you, it's not going to be corrected. And the only thing he can do is let you go. But the hope of the world is, as long as you draw breath, I can't take nobody. I have no power to take anybody's name out there. So I pray daily that those type of people, maybe, you know, I'm wrong. And I would love to, in that case, because I don't make that decision. But I pray for those type of people, the ones where the mom and dad got to take them to the gate. And I know that's kind of a somber note, but I think we made good time. It's 7:29. Any additions to what was information that was shared tonight? All right.
The last story is 1 Samuel 17.
1 Samuel 17. There it is. It's a good one too. I love it. I read it quite often. Like one of my favorite, man. David was a tough cat. Pulled on a lion's beard, man. A lion and a bear. Can you imagine somebody that's out there just pulling on a lion beard, just out there fighting a lion, like close enough to pull on his beard? And I watch them videos like on YouTube, and a lion swipe at the glass, and I get scared. It's a video, and David out there just running around. Hey, come here, lion! Roar, tugging on the beard. I bet you I can. Okay, I'm not gonna keep you no longer.
I got one thing.
Go ahead.
In verse, hard to tell. Anyways, the bottom of that chapter that he was just talking about, it says, "You must purge this evil from among you." And I've noticed throughout Deuteronomy that when they're talking about stoning, it's said quite often, "You must purge this evil from around you." And It's flat out, God is trying to get the Israelites to be a perfect people.
The whole point of putting somebody to death was, one, to get rid of that lack of better words, that cancer, to get rid of that cancer. But it was also, two, to fear the Lord, to let it be known that whatever I'm telling you, you can die. And man, y'all gonna get me talking again. You know, it's that same vigor in nature that we as believers, we as saints, we need to have that same vigor for, you know, ourselves, because it's no longer, you know, Petey picking up a stone, taking you to the gate. The stone is being thrown by somebody who got a witness that's far more higher than ours. You know, and we have to think that those words that's in there, and this is things I'm not going to get deep to, but we say the wages of sin is death, right? Each one of those were considered a transgression of a law. So if you keep transgressing it and you live in your life the way it is now, once again, we know that forgiveness is grace is more abundant than our failures and our flaws. But our failures and flaws can lead us to death. Sometimes sooner than when, you know, God intended. I always think when you die, you know, you live a life and you do believe, but you still err. You show up to heaven a little earlier than anticipated. God looking at you like, I knew you was coming, but did you know you was coming? Like, you had some more time for you to, you know, act right. But at the end of the day, you know, my brain works a little different, or maybe work the same. So I'm not gonna, you know, stand up here and talk my craziness. I think I need to stick to what's in front of us, because, you know, the moment you start talking, can I take this microphone off now? Okay, I can't take it. I got told no. All right. Is there? I'm always going to ask. Is there anything else? Any additions? Any remarks? Any closing? Thank you for finding that verse in 1 Samuel. I mean, once again, I'm gonna say it's one of my favorites. Deuteronomy does seem like it's a huge book to swallow. We're talking, what, 613 laws. A lot of them are reiterations. A lot of them are additions to, broken down, scattered. Sometimes when you look at it, it's just miscellaneous stuff placed in there, and it could be tough. But if you can take it in small bites, break the verses down, you know, see what they're talking about, you can start to see how it relates to the life we live today.